A brief about the stages of the President of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, from birth to the end of her term and her presidency of the country. Part 3. On November 6, 2008, Hasina returned to Bangladesh to contest the 2008 general election scheduled for December 29. She decided to participate in the parliamentary election under the banner of the Grand Alliance with the Jatiya Party, led by Hussein Mohammad Ershad, as its main partner. On December 11, 2008, Hasina formally announced her party's election manifesto during a news conference and vowed to build a digital Bangladesh by 2021. The AL manifesto was entitled A Charter for Change and included the party's commitment to Vision 2021. The manifesto included pledges to implement measures to reduce price hikes, combat corruption by strengthening the independent ACC and submission of annual wealth statements by influential people. Introduction of a long-term policy towards power and energy, increasing power generation to 7,000 megawatts by 2013. Bringing vibrancy to the agriculture sector and extending the safety net to the poor. Creating good governance and curtailing terrorism and religious extremism. Prosecution of 1971 war criminals, ensuring an independent and impartial judiciary, reforming the electoral system, strengthening the Human Rights Commission and depoliticizing the administration. Her Awami League and the Grand Alliance, a total of 14 parties, won the 2008 general election with a two-thirds majority, having won 230 out of 299 seats. Khalida Zia, leader of the BNP-led coalition, four-party alliance, rejected the results of the election by accusing the chief election commissioner of stage-managing the parliamentary election. Hasina was sworn into office as prime minister for a second term on January 6, 2009. Independent observers declared that the elections were held in a festive and peaceful atmosphere. After being elected prime minister, Hasina reneged on her agreement with the Jatiya Party to make Ershad, its leader, the president. Hasina removed Awami League's Central Committee members who supported reforms forced by the previous caretaker government. She had to confront a major national crisis in the form of the 2009 Bangladesh Rifles revolt over a pay dispute, which resulted in 56 deaths, including Bangladesh Army officers. Hasina was blamed by the army officers due to her refusal to intervene against the revolt. However, in 2009, a recording emerged of Hasina's private meeting with army officers, who expressed their anger with how she had not reacted more decisively in the revolt's early stages, by ordering an armed raid of the BDR Rifles compound. They believed that her efforts to appease the revolt's leaders delayed needed action, which led to more deaths. In a 2011 The Daily Star editorial, she was commended for her sagacious handling of the situation, which resulted in the prevention of a further bloodbath. In 2011, the parliament removed the law that required non-party caretaker government hold elections. In 2012, she maintained a hardline stance and refused to allow entry to Rohingya refugees fleeing Myanmar during the 2012 Rakhine State riots. On June 27, 2013, a case against Hasina and 24 other Bangladeshi ministers and security personnel was lodged at the International Criminal Court, ICC, for the alleged violation of human rights. She has been credited internationally for the achievement of some of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. In 2012, a coup attempt against her by mid-ranking army officers was stopped, with the Bangladesh Army being tipped off by an Indian intelligence agency. The Bangladesh Army described the army officers involved as being Islamist extremists. In 2012, she had a falling out with Muhammad Yunus, Nobel laureate and founder of Grameen Bank, following a Norwegian documentary that was critical of Yunus's transferring of money from Grameen Bank to an affiliate organization. Yunus transferred the money back after the documentary aired, but it increased scrutiny of the bank by the government and media in Bangladesh. Yunus lost control of his bank following a court verdict. He criticized Hasina and other Bangladeshi politicians. She responded by saying she did not understand why Yunus blamed her when it was a court verdict that removed him from Grameen Bank. During this term, her government led and succeeded in forming the International Crimes Tribunal to investigate and prosecute suspects involved in the Bangladesh genocide, committed by the Pakistan Army and their local collaborators, Razakars, Al-Badr, and Al-Shams during the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971. Hasina secured a second consecutive term in office with her ruling Awami League and its Grand Alliance allies, winning the 2014 general election by a landslide. The election was boycotted by leading opposition parties due to unfair conditions and a lack of non-partisan administration to conduct elections. As a result, the AL-led Grand Alliance won 267 seats, out of which 153 were uncontested, surpassing its 2008 poll success when it secured 263 parliamentary seats. Sheikh Hasina's Awami League has run Bangladesh since 2009 and won 288 seats in this election. One of the leading opposition parties accused it of using stuffed ballot boxes. The election was boycotted by major opposition parties including the BNP. The election was controversial, with reports of violence and an alleged crackdown on the opposition in the run-up to the election. In the election, 153 seats, of 300, went uncontested, of which the Awami League won 127 by default. Hasina's Awami League won a safe parliamentary majority with a total of 234 seats. As a result of the boycott and violence, voter turnout was lower than the previous few elections at only 51%. The day after the result, Hasina said that the boycott should not mean there will be a question of legitimacy. People participated in the poll and other parties participated. Despite the controversy, Hasina went on to form a government with Ershad's Jatiya Party, who won 34 seats, as the official opposition. The BNP wanted the elections to be held under a neutral caretaker government and had hoped to use protests to force the government to do so. The period also saw increasing attacks by Islamic extremists in the country, including the July 2016 Dhaka attack, which has been described as deadliest Islamist attack in Bangladeshi history by BBC. According to experts, the Hasina-led government's repression of political opposition as well as shrinking democratic and civic space has created the space for extremist groups to flourish and has generated a violent backlash from Islamist groups. In March 2017, Bangladesh's first 2 submarines were commissioned. In September 2017, Hasina's government granted refuge and aid to around 1 million Rohingya refugees and urged Myanmar to end violence against the Rohingya community. The majority of the Bangladeshi people supported the government's decision to provide refugee status to the Rohingya. Hasina received credit and praise for her actions. Hasina supported calls to remove the statue of justice in front of the Supreme Court. This was seen as the government bowing down to the pressure of those who use religion for political ends. Hasina is a patron of the Asian University for Women, led by Chancellor Sherry Blair, and including the First Lady of Japan, Aiki Abe, as well as Irina Bokova, the Director General of UNESCO. Hasina won her 3rd consecutive term, her 4th overall, when her Awami League won 288 of the 300 parliamentary seats. The leader of the main opposition alliance, Kamal Hossain, declared the vote farcical and rejected the results. Before the election, Human Rights Watch and other rights organizations had accused the government of creating an intimidating environment for the opposition. The New York Times editorial board described the election as farcical. The editorial stated that it was likely Hasina would have won without vote rigging and questioned why she did so. The BNP, the main opposition party that has been out of power for 12 years and boycotted the 2014 general election, fared extremely poorly. Winning only 8 seats, the party and its Jatiya Oikya Front alliance have been marginalized to the weakest opposition ever since Bangladesh's post-Ershad democratic restoration in 1991. In May 2021, Hasina provided the inaugural address for the opening of a new headquarters for the Bangladesh Post Office, named the Dak Bhavan. In her address, Hasina urged for further development of the postal service in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Bangladesh. Developmental measures outlined in the address include continuing the service's digital transformation, and the construction of cooling units in postal warehouses to pave the way for the sending of perishable food by mail. In January 2022, the government passed a law in the Jatiya Sangsad establishing the Universal Pension Scheme. All Bangladeshi citizens, including expatriates, between 18 and 60 years old are eligible to receive a monthly stipend under the scheme. By the end of fiscal year 2021-22, Bangladesh's external debt reached $95.86 billion, a 238% increase from 2011. The period is also marked by massive irregularities in the banking sector of the country, where the amount of default loans went from less than 23,000 Bangladeshi takas crore $2.0 billion in 2009. to more than 250,000 Bangladeshi takas crore, $21 billion in 2019 according to IMF. In July 2022, the Finance Ministry requested fiscal assistance from the International Monetary Fund. The government cited depleting foreign exchange reserves as a result of the sanctions in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. A staff-level agreement was reached in November 2022, and in January 2023, the IMF agreed to supply a support program totaling $4.7 billion. Consisting of $3.3 billion under the Extended Credit Facility and $1.4 billion under the new Resilience and Sustainability Facility. The IMF stated support package will help preserve macroeconomic stability, protect the vulnerable and foster inclusive and green growth. In December 2022, anti-government protests broke out, linked to the rising costs, demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister. On December 28, Hasina opened the first phase of Dhaka Metro Rail, the country's first mass rapid transit system from Mathura to Agargan. During the 2023 G20 New Delhi summit, Hasina had a bilateral meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to discuss diversifying India-Bangladesh cooperation, including areas like connectivity and commercial linkages. She was accompanied by her daughter Saima Wazed, who is a candidate for a WHO election. The summit also provided an opportunity for Hasina to meet other global leaders and strengthen Bangladesh's bilateral ties. In January 2024, Hasina won her fourth consecutive term when her party, the Awami League, won 224 of the 300 parliamentary seats amidst a low voter turnout in an election boycotted by the main opposition. In May 2024, Sheikh Hasina claimed that a white country was plotting to topple her government and claimed that she would be promised trouble-free elections in January if she allowed a white country to set up an airbase in Bangladesh. He also alleged that there was a conspiracy to create a Christian country on the lines of East Timor and Myanmar. In July 2024, protests broke out in support of reforming the quota system. In response, Hasina stated in a press conference, "If the grandchildren of freedom fighters don't get quota benefits, will those then go to the grandchildren of the razakars? That's my question to the countrymen." Protesters interpreted this as her referring to them as razakars and adopted the title in some of their slogans. The protests later turned violent, involving police, the armed forces, and members of the Awami League, Chhatra League, and Jubo League, resulting in over 200 deaths and more than 20,000 injuries. The government then shut down internet access for all non-essential purposes, conducted a massive crackdown on protesters with the help of the armed forces, and imposed a curfew that lasted 5 days. The Supreme Court agreed to reform the quota system, but the protesters then demanded justice for those killed during the demonstrations and an official apology from Hasina and the resignation of certain ministers they believed were responsible for inciting violence. On August 3, the protest organizers issued a single demand and announced a non-cooperation movement, calling for the resignation of Hasina and her entire cabinet. Hasina resigned on August 5, 2024, as large crowds of demonstrators surrounded the Prime Minister's residence. Her resignation was announced by Waqar Uzzaman, the chief of the army staff. Later that day, Hasina fled to India in a chaotic departure, first by car, then by helicopter, and finally by plane. She left no written resignation letter and gave no resignation speech. Hasina reportedly flew in a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 transport to Hindon Air Force Base in Ghaziabad, India, where she was received by the Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval along with other senior military officials. Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar told the parliament, at very short notice, she requested approval to come for the moment to India. Her son, Sajib Wazed, initially said that she would not return to politics and planned to stay in Delhi for a little while before her next destination, but subsequently said on August 7 that she and the Awami League would remain active in the Bangladeshi political scene, and that she would return to the country once elections were declared. He also insisted that Sheikh Hasina was still the Prime Minister, saying that she was unable to formally submit her resignation after being forced to flee from the protesters. Hasina had hoped to go to London, but the United Kingdom reportedly rebuffed initial overtures seeking political asylum. She reportedly considered seeking temporary residence in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Belarus, or Qatar. Because her nephew lives in Finland, that country was speculated as a possible destination. Although Sajib Wais lives in the US, she is considered unlikely to seek asylum there, as the US government criticized her rule in Bangladesh. Hasina was living in a secret location in India under tight security as of August 2024. Sajib Wais said that the protests which led to her resignation had support from a foreign intelligence agency, without naming any country. In a statement published in the Indian media on August 11, she has accused the United States of influencing her resignation, and previously accused the United States of conspiring to oust her in the Bangladeshi parliament. However, Wais called the statement false and fabricated and said Hasina did not give any statement before or after leaving Dhaka. The White House also denied allegations of U.S. involvement. On August 13, 2024, a murder complaint was filed at a court in Dhaka against Sheikh Hasina and 6 other government officials, including former Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan and former Transport and Bridges Minister and concurrent Awami League Secretary General Obaidul Qadir. Regarding the killing of a grocer during the quota reform protests on July 19. The Padma Bridge graft scandal involved the ruling Awami League government that allegedly sought, in exchange for the awarding of the construction contract, a large amount of money from the Canadian construction company SNC Lavalin. The allegations were subsequently found to be false and without merit, and a Canadian court subsequently dismissed the case. As a result of the allegations, the World Bank pulled out of a project to provide funding for the Padma Bridge, citing corruption concerns, cancelling 10,241.346 Bangladeshi takas crore, $870 million of credit for the 6-kilometer-long, 3.7 miles, road rail bridge over the Padma River. One of the individuals implicated was Minister of Communications Syed Abul Hossain, who subsequently resigned and was later acquitted of any wrongdoing. On July 11, 2012, BNP General Secretary Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir said the Awami League government should make public a letter sent by the World Bank, wherein the bank brought graft charges against Hasina and 3 other figures. On January 17, 2016, Hasina stated that a managing director of a bank in the United States provoked the World Bank to cancel the loan. The bridge was eventually constructed with the government's own funds and was inaugurated in June 2022 at a cost of 30,193.39 Bangladeshi takas crore, $2.6 billion, much higher than the original projected cost of 10,161.75 Bangladeshi takas crore, $860 million. On January 24, 2017, in a speech in Parliament, Prime Minister Hasina blamed Mohammed Yunus for the World Bank's pulling out of the project. According to her, Yunus lobbied with the former United States Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to persuade the World Bank to terminate the loan. On February 10, 2017, a justice of the Superior Court of Ontario dismissed the bribery conspiracy case for lack of any evidence. In 2018, Hasina's government passed the controversial Digital Security Act, 2018, under which any criticism deemed inappropriate by the government over the internet or any other media could be punished by prison terms of various degrees. This was heavily criticized both domestically and internationally for suppressing people's freedom of speech, as well as undermining press freedom in Bangladesh. In December 2022, the Hasina government ordered the closure of 191 websites accused of publishing anti-state news citing intelligence reports. Dhaka district authorities ordered the closure of Dainik Dinkle, which is owned by Tariq Rahman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP. Dainik Dinkle appealed the order to the Bangladesh Press Council, who dismissed their appeal in February 2022, resulting in its closure. The move has been criticized by government opponents who claim the move is an attempt to stifle opposition to the government. The government claimed Dainik Dinkle violated Articles 10, 11, 16, 21, 1, of the Printing Presses and Publications, Declaration and Registration Act, 1973, as it had irregular publication and its publisher was a convicted felon. In June 2024, Sheikh Hasina paid a state visit to New Delhi, during which Bangladesh and India signed 10 bilateral agreements, including one on allowing India a rail corridor to its northeastern states through Bangladeshi territory. This led to widespread criticism in Bangladesh on the issue of the country's sovereignty, accusing Hasina of selling the country to India. In 1968, Hasina married M. Wazd Mia, 1942-2009, a Bangladeshi physicist, writer, and chairman of the Bangladesh Atomic Energy Commission. They have a son, Sajib Wazd, and a daughter, Saima Wazd. Saima's father-in-law is a former Minister of Expatriates Welfare and Overseas Employment and LGRD, Kandakar Mosharraf Hossain. Hasina's only living sibling, Sheikh Rehana, served as the advisor of Tunjipura Upjila Unit Awami League in Gopalganj in 2017. Hasina's niece, and Sheikh Rehana's daughter, is Tulip Siddique, a British Labour Party politician and elected Member of Parliament and City Minister. During her political career, Sheikh Hasina has survived a total of 19 assassination attempts. She suffers from a hearing impairment as a result of injuries sustained during the 2004 Grenade attack. Given the violent history of brutal assassination of Sheikh Mujib family in 1975, and later attempts to assassinate Sheikh Hasina and very high security risk towards the immediate Mujib family members, in 2015, she and her children were given lifelong protection by the government of Bangladesh through the Special Security Force. Practice of extending such security protection is not rare for persons with high security risk to their lives. The government also announced free utility for life for her and her family. I stop at this point today. I hope I added something to you. You enjoyed the last few minutes. We will meet with you soon. Thank you for watching.